Hi, I'm Jim McCann, founder of 1-800-Flowers. I'm not satisfied when I learn something new unless I share it forward. And so we created this podcast to continue that, to share forward the wonderful people we get to meet and most importantly get to learn from and make our lives richer and better. Together we'll cover the human experience. And for me, the human experience is foundational in the idea of relationships. The topics will be far-reaching, but common element you'll see here is it's all about relationships. So I invite you to join us on this journey. Come experience it with us, share your thoughts and ideas, and become part of our community. We'd love to have you. Cynthia, you're an amazing person. Cynthia Covey Haller is an author, teacher, speaker. You have a passion for volunteering and leadership. You are a big member of your community and play a leadership role in, I think, everything that you do. You've contributed to several books and articles, and most recently co-writing Live Life in Crescendo. I just love the title of that book, of your book. But Living Life in Crescendo is about how to live your best life regardless of age or circumstance. And it's all about taking responsibility for your own happiness and for the happiness of the people around you. And I think there are so many lessons in here and so many parallels to what we think about, Cynthia, what we write about here at Flowers. Cynthia, during the last couple of few months, I've had occasion to go to funerals for friends who've lost their spouse. And I was curious about what you write about in the book about writing your own obituary. And I said, aha, when I read that, because what I chatted about with Lisa and Patty and a couple other people on my team here was having sat in those churches and listened to the eulogies that my friends gave about their spouses had a profound impact on me. And I haven't written it, but I was thinking of writing about what we ought to do is write a eulogy that isn't to be given yet because the people aren't gone, but it helps you to cast things in perspective. So what I mean by that is these people spoke beautiful eulogies about their long life partner, and they talked about things that maybe some of us would say annoy the heck out of us that they do. Yeah. But when they're gone, and when you've had time to reflect, and you turn it into a beautiful, charming thing that they did in life. And one of my friends, the most recent one, he talked about how we all knew she was very strong-willed. And his daughter in her eulogy talked about, and when she went to a farm stand and she'd see that tomato, no, this is the tomato you need to buy. I mean, this is it. There's no other. This is the one you should buy. And that might be annoying, or it might be charming. And if you're thinking about what you miss about people or what you will miss about people, and you do the mental exercise of writing their eulogy, it might change your attitude and perspective about the things that maybe could annoy you. And if you see them as the charming things that make them the people they are and the people you know you would miss the heck out of, it might change how you think about them today. And it sounded so much like what you did in encouraging us to write our own obituaries. What were you thinking there?
Well, it's either Tom Drucker or, Peter, Peter
Drucker.
Or Lincoln, or Abraham Lincoln said, the best way to predict your future is to create it. Best way to predict your future is to create it. Of course. So the eulogy would be like what you talked about, Jim. People are talking about their relationships with their loved ones, aren't they, when they die? They're not talking about they made so much money, they were so successful, they were this and that in society. What matters to people when they're gone is the love that is shared and the relationships and what they had together. And so the idea of the eulogy is, how do you want to be remembered? What do you want? What legacy do you want to leave? Or what are you doing right now to promote the things that you want to be remembered for? because we all, sometimes people don't appreciate you until you're dead. You get a great eulogy, but if you predict your future by creating it, by planning ahead, by deciding these are the things that I want to do, these are my most important roles. And that's the second perspective is, figure out what are your most important roles in life and set goals around those, then just follow the path of achieving them. And you kind of create that before you need it, before you pass away. And it's proactive. And you can act, while you're here. Some people say, well, I can't do very much. One woman said to a homeless advocate, look at me, I'm 75, I'm on a fixed income, I don't have a lot of money. You say that I could make a difference. How can I make a difference? And she said, could you donate 1 can of soup every week to the homeless bank, the food bank? And she said, yes, I could do that. And she said, imagine a single mother getting that can of soup and feeding her family at night. So when they go to bed, they don't go to bed hungry. Do you think that would make a difference to that family? And she said, well, yes, it would. And so for the next several years, she donated 1 can of soup every week and made a tremendous difference to hundreds of people. Just a simple thing like that. And so all of us have the ability to create our own future if we're conscious of it. And we have this crescendo mentality in mind when we're faced with a setback, a problem, a divorce, or maybe a business that didn't go right. How are we going to respond? How do we take action and change that? I give as an example in the book, a man whose business failed. He created it himself, and his partners kind of forced him out after 20 years. And at 47, he has 4 kids, and he's unemployed. And he's thinking, he's talking about living in diminuendo and thinking, my career's over. What am I going to do? I don't even know how I can provide for my family. And he decides, I've always wanted to go to law school. I'm going to change careers. And he enrolls in law school at 47, becoming the oldest lawyer by double a student in the class. And he said one morning he pulled into the parking lot at 5 a.m. in the law school parking lot, and it's the middle of winter, it's icy and cold, it's pitch dark, and gloom and depression just settle over him. And he thinks to himself, what have I done? How am I going to do this? But he doesn't look behind him. My father said, when you're driving a car, don't look in the rearview mirror all the time at what you've done, your past failures or successes. You'll end up in a ditch. Look ahead at what's coming. Don't look back. And so he decided to look forward with optimism. And no matter how hard this is, I'm going to see it through. He went to law school in 2.5 years, year round, worked really hard. And at 49, sets up a law practice. And within a couple of years, had more work than he could handle. He used his R&I and made it happen. So it's up to us, Jim. We've got to consciously see these choices in our life. Am I going to live in diminuendo? I've just been diagnosed with cancer. I have this horrible thing that just happened. You don't get to choose how you feel about that. Like what Michael J. Fox said when he discovered he had Parkinson's. He said, the only thing I realized is that only choice I don't have is whether or not I have Parkinson's. All the other choices are up to me. And then he's gone on to become the face of Parkinson's. He has raised $1 billion. Can you imagine that? $1 billion for Parkinson's, going from diminuendo to crescendo in his life.
I think he's, because he's so well known and so public about his situation, he's an unbelievable living example of you control your own destiny. It's all about how you look at life. It's the paradigm you choose to live in. There are two quick questions, one quick and one not so quick. Share with us a story. I found myself when I read about the young single mother who had 2 clearly developmentally disabled kids, and she went to a Pizza Hut and sat down, and she leaned across at a fellow at a table nearby, pre-apologizing for the fact that she knew her kids were not going to be the orderly, perfect, charming, quiet kids that people would expect. And she pre-apologized to the fellow across from her.
Yeah, I love that story. just like you said, the struggling single mom that's there trying. She just went through a terrible divorce, but she wants to make some fun for her kids on the weekend and goes out. And so she's struggling with these kids. A couple of them have some disabilities, and she knows it's going to be annoying to this person, and she's so self-conscious of it. But when she does her best, and they get through the mail, and she goes up to pay, and the woman at the cash register said, "This man has already paid for you," and he'd left her a note, and it said, "Thank you for the privilege of having me of me watching you parent your young children. I know it's difficult, but I saw you teach them respect and good manners and appreciation and kindness and friendship. You taught them all these things these last 30 minutes." And he said, "I don't know you. Our paths may not ever cross again, but to watch you parent like this, I am sure they're going to have wonderful lives." And he had left her a gift card to come back to Pizza Hut again. And she just broke into tears and said, "Here, I've had the hardest couple of years of my life." And this man looked at me differently. He saw what I was doing was most important and that I was struggling, and he encouraged me. He said, "I don't know who he is." She went to the TV station because she wanted him to know what it meant to her life and how that affected her. And it encouraged her to go on, to think, I'm making a difference in these kids' lives. It's hard for me to see the progress, but I just had a total stranger tell me that I'm a great mother and these kids are going to have wonderful lives because of me. I mean, what a difference that made for that man who spent $20 probably on a gift card, took the time to write a note and caused this woman to feel like, I can do this. Such an encouraging thing to do.
It was such a wonderful story. I frankly had to close the book when I read it. And I thought of two things. One is what a wonderful lesson that is. Frankly, three things. Second is something we write about here a lot and think about a lot and research a lot is that we profess that each of us has a superpower. And our superpower is to change not only how we feel, but how other people feel with simple little gestures. And that's not simple and it's not little, the story you tell about the fellow at the Pizza Hut, but it sure is an impactful gesture that will change that woman and perhaps those children's lives forever. The dark side of that is we can also hurt people. And when I read that, I immediately thought of my sister, my youngest of my two sisters. She has a grandson, a first grandson who's clearly has developmental disabilities on the spectrum, certainly. And especially when he's younger, he would act out. And she told me on the phone one night a story about she lives on the Jersey Shore, and she brought her grandson to the beach, and it was off season, and there was no one else around, and she just wanted to be away from other people, and he wanted to run in the sand, and she didn't want to worry about his behavior upsetting other people. And there was a crotchety old man on the beach, and when she came off the beach, he was sitting on a bench, and he got up and walked away and said, "That kid's an animal. He should be caged up." And she told me this story, and I thought of the pain she felt. And when I read your story, I thought, we can hurt people or we can help people with the simple things we say and do, and never lose sight of our ability and our power to influence people for the good or the bad, and why not for the good.
That's wonderful. That is a painful story. You're right. Our words and actions can go so far to damage someone. And what an opportunity for us to bless someone instead and to be a mentor. I don't know, Ray, you may have read about that story. One of the most powerful stories of someone going from diminuendo to crescendo and being a light to other people is the story of Anthony Ray Hinton. It's this man in Alabama who was convicted in his low 30s of killing two people that he had nothing to do with. He was basically framed. They didn't have anyone to arrest, and they framed this man. And he knew he was a good person and he hadn't committed the crime, so he trusted that he'd be released. And he found himself convicted and on death row in Alabama. You can imagine, you can't get any lower than that, on death row, waiting for execution. And he's thinking, my life has spiraled out of control. So he goes into this prison cell and he throws his Bible under his bed, meaning just like, I give up. He's in a dark place. And he says, if they think I'm guilty, I know I'm not, but I'm not going to communicate with anyone. I'm going to shut down. Well, he didn't talk to anyone for 3 years, 3 miserable years. He didn't speak to the guards or the fellow cellmates or anyone except for family that would come to visit him occasionally. And he was living in diminuendo and he was miserable. He had no power, no influence, and he was just shutting down. Well, one night he hears his cellmate next to him started just sobbing and begging for someone to help him with his pain. And he said, Ray said, it awoke in me some compassion that I had suppressed. And he said, it just floored me. He said, it rocked me. The only choice I don't have is whether or not I can be on death row. I have other choices. I can choose hate and despair, or I can choose love and compassion. It's up to me. And he broke his silence and he spoke to this man and found out his mother had just passed away. And he was so devastated that he had never see his mother again. So Ray spent the night comforting him, talking to him about his mother, getting him to laugh, telling him stories about what she would do, taking care of them, and talking about the great food she made, and just supporting him so much the whole night. And he decided at that moment, he said, I can choose despair and hate, or I can just choose to become my good self again and help bless other people. So he said he dusted off his Bible that was still under his bed. And from that point on, he became a light and a beacon to the people around him. He won over the guards. He got the warden to let him have a book club on death row. He said it's probably the first book club they've had. And he would transport these prisoners to other places through reading about great events and places that they could travel, taking them out of that dreary jail. And he also attracted the attention, finally, after 14 years in prison, of Brian Stevenson, who is the great lawyer for Equal Justice Initiative. You may have heard of Just Mercy. Sure. In the book. Well, he took on his case and fought for the next 14 years. It's just a tragedy it took so long. But he got all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, and they clearly saw that this man was not guilty and released him after almost 30 years. So he comes out of prison and he says to his family and friends, the sun does shine. And that became the title of a book that he wrote, a New York Times bestseller. 4 years later, he wrote this book about his journey, basically from diminuendo to crescendo. So Anthony Ray, he says, they took my 30s, my 40s, and my 50s, but what they couldn't take from me was my joy. And so now he is an author, an advocate. He works with Brian Stevenson. He helps people that are unjustly imprisoned. And like the subtitle of the book, his life has just exploded. His most important work is still ahead of him. He's doing it right now. So it's an incredible story of choice and deciding, you know what, I'm gonna do something different than not speak and shut down. And what a light he is now, and a beacon to so many.
Cynthia, reading this is such a great exercise for us all. Don't, after you read Living Life in Crescendo, don't put it far up on your bookshelf. Keep it on a lower level, because every once in a while you should reach out, open it up, and just read randomly a chapter, because it'll help you hit the red reset button. And don't we all need to do that from time to time?
Thank you so much for inviting me. I've loved being part of your show.
Thanks for sharing Living Life in a Crescendo with us. The front of it's a lot better than the back of it for people to see. And thanks for sharing your story, lessons you've learned, and helping us to self-help. Nothing's more valuable. What a treat to spend time with you. Thank you, Cynthia. Well, I hope you enjoyed what you heard, and I know I'll be sharing it forward. I hope you get to as well. Let's keep the conversation going. Follow me along on Twitter at Jim1800Flowers and on LinkedIn at Jim McCann. Hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to Celebrations Chatter. You can join our community by reaching out at chatter@celebrations.com. And while you're at it, tell us what topics you'd like us to explore here on the Celebrations Chatter podcast. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to share it forward.